welcome back. Today we're talking about Succession episode 3, Disruption, and this was a fantastic episode. So Ken and Logan are on opposite sides of the spectrum. Ken wants to win this battle in the court of public opinion, whereas Logan doesn't care. He doesn't want to cooperate, and it's his way or the highway. And both of them are skating by, but barely. So first I want to talk about Ken. So talk about being in just a totally different headspace. I mean, he is just all over the place. And right from the beginning, you can see that he very much cares what other people think, right? And I enjoyed this interview for many reasons. First, it kind of foreshadowed that insane stunt that he was going to pull. And second, he's talking a big game. He's talking about immunity. He's talking about the fact that his family will eventually go down, the sort of inevitability of all of it. But none of this is true, right? The only reason that Logan goes down in the end is because he talked to the wrong person, right? Like he kind of was way too aggressive to the wrong people, and he did it to himself, right? It had nothing to do with these papers. We still don't know what's in these papers, but I don't think this was the reason. Ken's whole vibe this episode is that he's kind of the knight in shining armor. He's kind of a plastic Jesus. You know, his whole thing is, I'm going to take my rightful place. And he's kind of going around town making sure that he attends all the corporate events. So he's trying to look strong, right? So his family strategy is that they're going to look like a family and that he's the crazy one. He's kind of like Jack the Ripper. He's out there. He's by himself. They tried to help him, but nobody could help him. And Ken's strategy is, I'm here to stay. This is my town. You're not going to run me out. I'm not afraid. And so he's trying to build that trust. He's trying to communicate that he's enough. And I feel like it's working, and the thing that Ken has done very well is surround himself with people that he thinks he can predict. One of them being Greg. Now, one of the best scenes was this limo scene when they're playing good tweet, bad tweet. And again, here's this guy claiming to be everyone's savior. They're sitting in this limousine, and you can tell that Ken is very bothered by the bad tweets. And also, he doesn't trust Greg 100%, because if you recall from other previous seasons, he did look at Greg and he did tell him, like, listen, I see you. I know exactly what you are. So the fact that he promised him a watch, or that's what was suggested, and that he didn't end up buying him this very expensive watch, which is what I think triggered Greg to kind of warn Tom that Ken was coming, is really interesting, because I think Ken is really, unlike Logan, he's really trying to control his circle, but he kind of does too much. He kind of gets ahead of himself. And so, as I said, Ken's strategy is to show up to all the company events. And one of these events is like save the journalists or something, like protection of journalists. And this was a laugh. So before he even goes into this place, he's like, you know, the patriarchy, like, F that. And the woman he's coming in with is just as rich as he is. Like, he's the 1%, she's the 1%. So again, like, Ken is just, like, here's a guy showing up to this event to save journalists. And his whole plan is to, like, colonize journalism. Right, like he wants to make their company sort of the one-stop shop for information to control it. So I was like, you're also trash, Ken. And so he shows up like talking a big game, and this party was significant because it's the last time him and Shiv are on good terms. And I feel like up until that crazy stunt he pulled, it was possible. You know, like they kept thinking they could kind of reel him back in, they could kind of negotiate. And I think even Ken thought at some point that maybe like they'll eventually come over to my side. Like the whole thing was hostile, but it wasn't like there was nothing that couldn't be fixed. So Siobhan has been on the fence. You know, she's kind of going back and forth. She cares about Ken, but at the same time, she wants to stay loyal to her father. So she's kind of in that kind of like push-pull, and she doesn't really know what to do with herself. And I think Kendall just lost sight of what was important. And I think he was so into how other people saw him and into kind of looking woke that he ends up kind of stabbing. He ends up doing Siobhan so dirty. And Kendall is very thin-skinned. Like, he doesn't have very thick skin. Like, he acts tougher than he is. And he gets so fixated on this one sort of comedian that keeps taking shots at him, talking like, you know, he's kind of fake woke, his brain. And I like this segment because everything this comedian said was exactly spot on, right? Like, he's delusional. He sees himself as like the savior, but he's just as bad as the people he's trying to take over. You know, like their nicknames for him were super killer. And he's very fixated on this. He's like, yeah, no worries. It's all love. Like, he's trying to pretend like he can take it. But deep down, it's like he's really sensitive because he wants to be seen as like this good guy. And I think he really sees himself this way. And so he keeps replaying this video of this comedian like bashing him, and I think this is what triggered his crazy sort of idea. And I think Ken he doesn't think before he acts, right? So he really wants to prove that he's not fake woke. So again, he kind of shows up to this meeting, and this scene was absolutely insane. So again, Ken's whole strategy is, I'm here, you're not gonna scare me, this is my company, if you have a meeting, I have every right to show up, which he does. So not only does he show up to their sort of company meeting, but he shows up knowing that Siobhan is kind of making her first serious appearance. And at first you can tell like Ken is just, like it's just a game. Like he shows up, you know, his passwords have been changed, he thinks his AC has been hacked, like nothing serious. And then during this time he kind of brainstorms an idea, and he tells the people around him to go shopping for something. And we don't know what they're shopping for until this scene. So they went off, bought speakers, and then just as the meeting was starting, they kind of blast music. And the song that they blasted is what makes the show brilliant, because the show is very good at showing and not telling, right? Like and you don't really have shows like this anymore. Like this is just fine writing from beginning to end. This is quality. And the song they played was so appropriate given their situation, because they're dealing with all these allegations of all these horrible things that they've done. And Kendall just snapped. You know, he snapped, and I don't think he thought about it before he did it. And so his thing is, I'm gonna do this, and this is gonna prove that I'm woke, and then I'm gonna go to this comedy show, and then they're gonna praise me for doing it. And it's gonna be a great time. So he's trying to have his cake and eat it too, but this was like the end of the line, and Siobhan just spits, you know, in his notebook, and this was it. Like this is the thing that kind of ripped them apart, in my opinion. And just, you know, again, the problem with this family is everybody goes too far because they don't see themselves. Like they take it too far because they're just out of their minds. So Siobhan writes this letter basically calling him a bad father, a delusional human being, just everything you can think of, a recovering drug addict. And the most interesting thing about this letter, like as angry as Siobhan was, she couldn't get any of the other siblings to sign off on it. And I thought that was really significant, because it showed that although they look like they're all together, everybody's looking out for their own best interests, right? Like Connor says at one point, like, my signature isn't free. So if Logan goes down, they are not willing to go down with him. And so Siobhan kind of writes this letter in a moment of anger, and she rains on Ken's parade, and Ken has the audacity to show up to this place, to show up to this comedy like show. And throughout this episode, he's had people writing him jokes. You know, he's been trying to write his own jokes. He's trying to be relatable, but he's just not a relatable dude. Like, dude, you're so far from relatable that it's honestly mind-blowing. And just before he goes on air, he's kind of talking to the writers. He's saying, you know what, hurt me, I can take it. And they're looking at him like, is he okay? Like, are you okay, sir? Like, you obviously can't take it. It was kind of a passive-aggressive, like, I don't know, there was just something unnatural about everything Ken was doing. And just before he goes on air, Siobhan releases the letter, and he's heartbroken. He's shook, he's, you know, this is when his true colors were revealed, because it's clear that, again, he talks a big game, right? And so they're trying to calm him down, and they're saying, listen, it's just a show, relax, it's not that deep, take a break, and then, you know, take it easy. And he doesn't cancel. That's what I think is significant. He doesn't cancel the show. Instead, he finds a corner, hides, and pretty much ghosts everyone. He decides, not only am I not gonna come on the show, I'm not gonna tell anybody where I am. So he finds a closet, and he kind of hurdles. He kind of puts himself into like the feet, like he's just devastated, right? He feels embarrassed, as he should. And just pure luck, the FBI raided Logan, and that was able to kind of distract from this. Because had the FBI not raided Logan and he did this, like, he would look really bad to the press, right? Like, things would look kind of messy. So he was kind of saved in the end, but he definitely didn't deserve saving. Like, he's been really raggedy this episode. He's obsessed with what other people think, and I think he bought into his own narrative that he kind of forgot, like, what this even is about. And I like this commentary they're doing with Ken's character, because this kind of woke billionaire, you know, this guy who thinks he's so like relatable and he's so like down with, and it's like, they're not, you know, y'all are trying to colonize space. Like, this is not, like, he really thinks he's like a good guy, you know, it's deep, and it's like, you know, you killed somebody and you got away with it. So next I want to turn to Logan. So Logan's strategy is the polar opposite. He doesn't want to cooperate. And his strategy, again, is to make it look like the family is like strong. Like, if you come after us, we're gonna slit your throats. Like, he doesn't care. He's not trying to even look cooperative. He's not even pretending to cooperate. And this show, again, is the definition of show don't tell, because they run a news agency in part, like that's one of their businesses. And the amount of like questions they censor, the amount of sort of things they avoid answering. Like, there's one scene where, you know, I think Roman is tasked with making the family look good, and they're speaking to someone from their news agency, and he's like, you know, it's super unethical if I tell you the questions beforehand, but here's the questions beforehand. You know, it's just, the whole thing is so unethical. You obviously don't care about anybody. And even just before Siobhan's board meeting, right, like, they get all these employee cards, basically like people ashamed of working at like Waystar, and, you know, they're just like chucking them. They're just like, yeah, no, this is not it. And they kind of created a list of questions that people would want to know. Like, it's just really funny. Like, y'all are so unethical and so like, and they kind of sprinkle these in throughout, right? Like, I think at the start they're like, we get it. Like, that was their slogan. And the whole thing is so passive. Like, yeah, we get it, but it is what it is. Logan is in a rut, and he's surrounded by people he thinks he can trust. So the people that he's surrounded by, I feel like, are people that are chained to him. So the attitude is, if he goes down, you are all forcibly going down with me, right? And he's kind of acting up on Jerry, I noticed, like taking these little digs at her. Kind of like he's insecure because she's the only person that could legitimately kind of take over for him, and he's very bothered by that. And as far as everybody else around him, they're either taking their chances or they're 100% guilty, so they might as well just enjoy the ride. So a few people that, again, he's really kind of betting on the fact that they have nowhere else to go. And I think it's really interesting, this conversation with Siobhan, because this kind of foreshadows his demise. And again, the show is very good at showing and not telling. So a few things to note. First, he pretty much denies the fact that like he didn't know like how bad it was at his own company. Like, I get so many emails. But something he says that's really interesting is that you're not going to find a piece of paper that makes you ashamed of me. Basically saying like, you got nothing on me. You know, like, I've covered my tracks this well. Like, they're never gonna be able to nail me 100%. And the bit that kind of like, I mean, talk about like famous last words. At some point, he literally says, you know what? Politics is people this, people that, and I can handle people. And it's his people handling skills that ends up getting him raided by the FBI. And so again, like he kind of is, his attitude is like, listen, I have connections and I'm not afraid to use them. And apparently neither is Tom. So Tom is feeling kind of insecure, as he should. He pretty much destroyed evidence. So there's no scenario in which Logan goes down and he doesn't go down with him. And every sort of scenario that he's weighed out, he's talked to lawyers, he's talked to everyone, and they all say the same thing, which is that he's screwed. Like, there's not a lot he could do. So his strategy is smart because he's trying to get ahead of it. And by ahead of it, he means, okay, what can I get out of it if I do go to jail? And so instead of negotiating, because he's not going to get immunity and he doesn't foresee that. And although Ken kind of entertains it at some point, like, I think logically he knows it's not possible. So he's like, okay, I'll just tell Logan that I'm going to take the fall for him, or I'm willing to, and hopefully this will make a terrible situation less worse. So he's in a really kind of shitty situation. And Logan is also in a really bad situation, but he really thinks he can get out of it. And you see that when he kind of ambushes this White House aide, and this is what I believe gets him raided by the FBI, because he has the audacity to raid this woman, basically ambush this woman, into kind of forcing her into a conversation. So he wants the president to help. And again, he has connections and he's not afraid to use it. But what kills him is that in this conversation, he basically threatened that if they don't help him, he's going to make sure that the news coverage is negative. They're going to take his poll numbers away. Like, they're going to go in on him. And so the message that sends is, we have to take this guy out before he takes us out. And that was it. You know, like, his people handling skills was the thing that kind of nails him in the end. So this raid by the FBI was just all kinds of crazy. He cooperates because he has to cooperate. Like, he pretty much has no choice. And you can see the sort of like depression in his face when he's like, let them in. You know, like he's just devastated. And the fact that Jerry was the one pushing, like they were all like literally waiting to see what he would do, but there was nothing he could do. It was so out of his hands, and just like that, Kendall barely made it out. So overall, I thought this was an excellent episode. I thought it was very smart, very clever. Again, they're both kind of skating by, and they're at totally different ends of the spectrum. And in the end, I don't think this is going to work out for anyone. But you guys let me know what you think, and until next time.